Isumenifunga kokoro, isumenifunga minyororo, hata kwenye giza totoro, baby. Nachotaka ni uwepo wako na ni sawa. When Juliet mini Romeo, na kesho peponi, yeah. Sikio shafunga kakomeo, ya usisikie. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na halina, kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na halina, kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. This kind of love, utaipata kwa hela, this kind of love, utaipata kwa sponsor, Ora nite tekete, mama nite tekete, ola kumbala thamani, kumbala thamani. Ora nite tekete, mama nite tekete, ola kumbala thamani, kumbala thamani. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na halina, kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. Wabaya wanasema unifai, wanasema yetu na halina, kwenye mpenzi na imani, baby. This kind of love, utaipata kwa hela, this kind of love, utaipata kwa sponsor, this kind of love, utaipata kwa hela, this kind of love, utaipata kwa sponsor, nimejaliwa moyo upendo, ukipenda napenda vibaya, ila skendo zimefanya sijasetwa, mademo wanakuwa vibaya. Nimeshabadili hata mienendo, nadai nafuria mbaya, sifanyi kiki tena na skendo, nazo kisa wewe mama. Wananiita playboy heartbreak, baada kitendo nasema wengine wenye mimi, hata kama na watania. Wananiita playboy heartbreak, baada kitendo nasema wengine wenye mimi, hata kama na watania. Baby, mi so mtu wa mchezo baby, me so mchezo nachukulia poa tu, nioshe vyombo nikande, ila juhudi zangu bure tu, namtendekeza kama mtoto, chakula kukomoshi kama mashine napata ngo, wanaangalia bwawa la maji, wananifanya baada kitendo nasema wenye mimi, hata kama na watania. Wananiita playboy heartbreak, baada kitendo nasema Wengine wenye nini hata kama na watania. Baby mi so mtu wa mchezo mchezo. Baby mi so mtu wa mchezo mchezo. Kupenda ni vitendo, si maneno maneno, ndio nakupa kitengo kwa kufika malengo.
All right, so we'll start this. Harrison, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. You look really good.
Thank you. I'm actually very happy to be joining this conversation. This is really good.
Yeah, wonderful. Welcome to the platform.
Thank you very much.
Good. So before we start, I just want to explain some few things and then we can start. All right, so tonight we'll be joined by you as our guest, but I want to explain to the viewers that Mr. Harrison Nganga is the president of the Atheist Society of Kenya. And
Harrison Mumia.
Harrison Mumia. Thank you for the correction. I thought minor, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so this conversation also will be joined by a group of panelists. We'll have some 2 to 3 guys who will be panelists. Basically, they will be like turning to become pastors and also missiology experts in this discussion.
That's okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing I want to explain other things. That's the one of the panelists. Another thing I want to explain is that everyone who wants to join this conversation to ask Mr. Harrison any question, you are welcome to join. But basically, Harrison is the main guest. So we will have some few rules how we run this conversation. Harrison, first we will have an introduction. After the introduction, you will explain about your society and all you do and all your activities. After that, then guys will join. Maybe first we start with the panelists asking you questions and then you will respond to them. I also want to mention, I don't want this conversation to be just about atheists versus Christians. This is a conversation that there is no God. That's based on Harrison's movement. So you'll be explaining more about that. Number 3, this is about human rights conversation. And also this will be a discussion about overcoming fear and also basically winning in this society where we have an equal dimension in all that we do. All right, so I would like to start. So first of all, I want to have introductions. All right?
That's okay, that's fine.
All right, so let's start, because Harrison is the guest, let's start with Wekesa. Wekesa, you can introduce yourself, and then Alphonse, and then Harrison. After he introduces himself, then Harrison will take the charge in terms of explaining about the society, and then we'll come to the discussion.
Yeah, my name is Wekesa. Yeah, good evening. My name is Wekesa Eric. I'm in Machakos County. I'm a specialist in sales and marketing.
But tonight you are a pastor. That's what you said, right? All right.
Yeah, I'm interested in spiritual matters.
Okay. Next. Alphonse.
Thank you, Patrick. My name is Alphonse Were. Now, just for clarification before we start anything, Were and Mumia come from the same kingdom, and it happens to be kingdom led by Mumia. Yes. Yeah. So, what I do is I'm a labor policy consultant based in Nairobi, and a Christian by faith. I thought I should mention that as well.
Okay, good. So you are actually the missiology expert in this discussion, right?
I'm not an expert, but I'm a member of that faith.
Good. That's fine. All right. So we'll have Harrison. Maybe Harrison, you can take from there.
Yeah, I think let me first say that I hope everybody is keeping safe. These are very challenging times for the country, both in terms of the economy. I really sympathize with a lot of my friends and relatives who are going through hard, challenging economic times. And I hope we are all keeping safe. And my hope is that we shall overcome this pandemic and then move to better things. So my name is Harrison Mumia. I'm in Nairobi County. We are under there's the night curfew, of course, but then there's the containment, what Uhuru was calling the containment. So I'm not moving a lot. I am trying to be in the house as much as possible. I'm a graduate of computer science, master's in corporate communications. I'm interested in science and philosophy. Those are areas that I'm very interested in. I'm an atheist. I'm also a humanist. And I'm also the president of the Atheists in Kenya Society. So just to give a background, the Atheists in Kenya Society was registered by the government of Kenya in 2016. And basically what we are doing is to bring together those who don't believe in God and create a forum for them where they can interact, because there has never existed such a forum in this country. We promote science, and basically we base a lot of our decisions on the science. The world is now fighting with coronavirus, so you can actually appreciate that science is leading in terms of understanding coronavirus. There is no faith from my brother where you can see faith is in the back seat. But we also, one of our objectives is science. We are very keen on science. The other thing which we do as a society is promote an approach to morality that is based on humanistic ideals and rational ideals and values. So we look at morality not from the idea that morality comes from a God, but we try to be as rational and as humanistic in our approach to morality. The third objective for the society is we promote what we call skeptical inquiry, which basically means that we try to encourage people to ask questions and try as much as possible to get answers that make sense. So that things like miracles, things like blessings, for us, they cannot be answers to questions that bother us. When somebody tells you a miracle happened or you're going to be blessed, we think that those are irrational explanations to concepts. So we try as much as possible to promote what calls skeptical inquiry. And then finally, we want to normalize atheism. We want public acceptance of atheism in Kenya. Remember, as an atheist, even myself, I was fired by the Central Bank of Kenya, although I've sued them, but I was fired because of being an atheist. So there's a bit of hostility in the country towards those who don't believe in God. And this is historical, it's just because we are coming from a history of too much religion. And this has affected how people look at alternative worldviews like atheism. And so I just want to thank all those who are participating in this. And I'm looking forward to a very fruitful engagement.
Good, very good. That's a very good introduction to start this conversation. So the first things I will want, since you are actually the one in the hot seat, I'll want our panelists first to ask you questions. There's so many guys trying to access and join, also asking questions, but please be brief when you are giving your perspective to Mr. Harrison. All right, so we can start with Wekesa.
Yeah, thank you for actually making it to this place and expressing part of your belief or non-belief system so that we can understand where you are coming from and the script on which you are reading from. Maybe I want to take this discussion from where we are in the context we are in. We are having COVID-19, and a part of it is for us to understand if we have COVID-19. There are quite a number of signs that we need to look at. If you have a particular kind of symptoms, then you are thought to have COVID-19. But we have also been told that 56% of the patients or COVID patients are not having the symptoms. So they are called asymptomatic. There's some echo. They are called asymptomatic. Now, this is where I want to derive my discussion. Asymptomatic means the absence of signs. So the truth, when there are absence of signs, it doesn't mean that signs don't exist, but it means that in a particular people, there are no signs, but the truth is they are carriers of COVID-19. Now, the word atheist comes from the word theist. Okay. So theism is the belief in at least one God. It's the belief of many gods. For those who believe in many gods, like Hindus are called the polytheists. But for those who believe in one God, they can be just theists. So the opposite of it, you are the direct opposite of it. That atheist means that there is no God. So when we talk about there is no sign, does it mean there is no the causative agent? So if there is no belief, does it mean God does not exist?
So your question is actually, is there God or there is no God? That's how you are asking them. So Harrison, can you answer? Is there God or there is no God?
I think that's a good question. Basically, what Wekesa is saying is that without evidence, there is a possibility of existence. So he's basically he has given an analogy. What he's saying is that there are those who have COVID-19 and they are showing symptoms. Maybe they are coughing. And so when you see that symptom, it means they have COVID-19. But even so, you have to still test them because you can also cough and you have a pneumonia. You can cough and you have maybe a flu. You can sneeze and you have a flu. It can be anything. It doesn't mean that when you sneeze or you cough, the symptom necessarily shows that it is COVID-19. So I think that's the first problem with your argument. The other thing which you're trying to suggest is that so if you don't have symptoms, then you are asymptomatic, which basically means that for God, we cannot see God, and therefore it doesn't mean he does not exist. I think that's the basis of your argument, isn't it? That's the basis
Yes.
of your argument. That we cannot see
In,
God.
in other words, I'm saying God exists is only that a few of the people have asymptomatic or atheistic part of it. They don't believe, or they have not interacted him in any forum, so they don't believe he exists. That's why they are like asymptomatic. But
Okay.
let me give you
Right.
my perspective.
Let him.
Let me just respond. I actually do understand what you're saying, and I think for me, what I'll only tell you is that when you're an atheist like me, I grew up as a Christian, and I grew up in a Christian family. I went to church, and I actually did practice all that is practiced in Christianity. I did pray. I got saved. I did all these things. I think for me, the question of God is not as simple as describing the asymptomatic versus symptomatic, or when you claim that there is an entity that created the universe, that is responsible for the existence of life. When you claim such an entity, which is beyond time and space, I hear religious people saying that God is beyond time and space. In fact, some have said God is beyond understanding. When you claim such an entity, it is upon you to produce evidence that such an entity exists.
Yeah.
And for me, I do not see any evidence. For COVID-19, there is a lot of evidence, including you can be tested for COVID-19. We even know how that virus looks like. And COVID-19 cannot be compared to evidence for God. Evidence for God, somebody who is all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipotent, omnipresent, such an entity, there is no evidence that such an entity exists. And the only thing that we are seeing happening is religious people, pastors, saying that, you know what, the Bible is evidence that God exists. So they quote the Bible. They quote that this is the God who created us. This is a God who wants the best for us. This is a God who wants us to go to heaven. He has a son called Jesus. And if you believe in Jesus, you're going to go to heaven. If you don't, you're going to go to hell. This is what we are seeing from the religious people. But that is not evidence for the existence of a God. If you look at the natural world, if you look at life as it is, there is nothing to show that our life is under the observation or under the manipulation of a supernatural entity. So I left Christianity because really I was wasting my time there. You know, you have to get to a point and ask yourself critically now, forget about what you've been taught, because one of the problems in this, especially in Africa, is that we have stuck to what we've been taught. And I do believe strongly that it has come a time in Kenya, especially now that we are all Kenyans, it has come a time when we have to step back and be alert and ask those critical questions. Okay, fine, I was taught this way by my parents, but when I critically look at the world, does it look, for example, we had people who died of floods just the other day. Simple things that you can observe. Rain comes, we say rain is a blessing from God, and then some characters, 12, get buried by the very mudslides that are caused by the rain. If you look at even COVID-19, some people are dying. And we are asking today, if this God is so powerful, why would people die of COVID-19? I know you tell me that is the will of God and things like those, but those are not rational explanations for a God who cares about humanity. So I think there is no comparison between COVID-19, as you're putting it, Wekesa, and the God who is powerful, all-knowing, almighty, and so on and so forth. So I think that is a fallacy which is called, there's a fallacy which you are committing. It's called you're comparing two things that are not comparable. COVID-19 and a supernatural, all-powerful God. Those are not two things you can put on the same table and compare.
Thank you very much, Alson. That's for responding to Ekesa. But I want to mention...
I have a right of response.
Wait to Ekesa. I want to mention, I want to go to Alphonse and then I come to you to respond. But before that, I want to introduce Daniel and he can tell us what he does so that we understand where he's coming from in this discussion. So first introduction to Daniel and then I go to Alphonse. So if you want to respond, you just raise your hand. It's easier. All right, Daniel. Can you unmute your mic, Daniel? Unmute your mic. All right.
Am I on?
Yeah, you are on.
Yes, my name is Daniel Kuria. I'm a businessman and I am a believer and also a student of truth and the Bible too. I like hearing, I like learning and listening to other people's opinion. I also believe that not all that I know is there to know. There is more that could be that I probably do not know. And on that basis, I like interacting with everybody in respect.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So let's go to Alphonse. Alphonse, unmute your mic.
Yeah, Harrison, I studied biology and agriculture in campus. I don't know if that is religious enough. So I want us to be a bit systematic from my biology perspective. I want to use something that I think we have learned in primary, secondary, and those who have done science above that, biological sciences, for the sake of rationality, because your worldview is a worldview of rationale. If it doesn't make sense, it's not sensible, and it should be discarded.
It should be dismissed.
Now, there is something we call metamorphosis in Animalia kingdom, specifically for insects, the insecta class. Now, I want to choose, there are two types of metamorphosis. They have incomplete metamorphosis and you have complete metamorphosis. So I want to take the life of a butterfly. A butterfly undergoes 4 stages before it comes into an adult. The first stage is an egg. Then the following one is a caterpillar. I want to be as basic as I can for our viewers and those who are listening to us. The next one is a caterpillar, which goes to a pupa, which the pupal stage is it rests, it cannot move, it looks and behaves lifeless. And then the last one is a very beautiful, colorful, different types of caterpillar, of butterflies. I hope that is rational enough and something we know.
Yeah.
Okay, now tell me the relationship. How do you, if communication was to be there between a caterpillar and a larva, or a caterpillar and a pupa, or a caterpillar and the butterfly, if they were to communicate, and from the scientific facts or biological facts that you may be in possession or no, how do they communicate? If a caterpillar met a butterfly or a butterfly met a caterpillar and they have to communicate, how do they communicate?
Right, respond to that.
I don't know. You know, you're the biologist. I don't know. I mean, you're assuming I understand how caterpillars and butterflies communicate. I mean, that is something which you need to explain to me, because if you present me with a question such as that, me, I'm a computer scientist. My specialty is in IT, and I do programming. So when you pose to me a question which I cannot explain,
it's fine.
What you need to do is to go to make your point based on that that example.
Yeah, I wanted to be systematic so that at least we go stage by stage. I will make my point. That is the initial stage of my point, and the point is that we don't understand everything, and the fact that we don't understand everything does not make them stop from existing. Including a computer scientist, there are things you understand that I don't understand, and the fact that I don't understand them doesn't make them non-existent. But that's not where I was going. Where I was going is that for a butterfly to have 4 stages of life, and these 4 stages of life have no correlation in terms of communication. They cannot understand each other. Neither can we have a backward process at all. So there is no time a butterfly will be a butterfly and come back into an egg and speak to the caterpillar how it is nice to become a butterfly, so that when they grow up, they will become butterflies. But the complete metamorphosis has 4 stages. The egg stage, human beings equally from a spiritual perspective. So this is my first point, that from a spiritual perspective, human beings have 4 stages. Just the way from a biological perspective, a butterfly has 4 stages. Both of them start with an egg. Now,
okay, what I'd like to encourage you, because I can see where you're going. Basically, you're saying we can't understand everything.
no.
Human beings don't understand everything. And that one, I agree with you totally, that we cannot understand everything. In fact, we just started understanding some things very recently, including things like the existence of planets. Just 200 years ago is when we started understanding that the Earth revolves around the sun. 200 years ago, there's a scientist called Copernicus. So I understand that we can't understand everything. But I want to ask you, there's an experiment I want to do with all of you.
Can you allow me to finish my presentation first?
This is a mug of, it's a mug.
Sorry.
It's a water bottle. It's a water bottle.
So
Harrison.
wait, Alphonse. So let's do this. Harrison, can we get maybe Alphonse to quickly finish his point, and then I let you to respond in detail, so that he doesn't feel like he has not finished. Okay, Alphonse.
Yeah, my point is that human beings as spiritual beings, and I'm using rationale here because atheism from his presentation believes in rationale, has what you call complete life cycle, which has 4 stages. Now, the 4 stages, the first stage is an egg, which all of us were an ovum, which was an egg. Then after the egg, we go to the second stage, which is the caterpillar stage for the butterfly, but for human beings, is now the one we are in. Yeah, where people talk of now we are growing in different stages from after the fetus all the way to when they die, in between there. Now, in biological sciences, and I'm doing the relationship so that other people who are not able to talk to us now can refer, and we can do this reference later. There are things in biology called instars. There are different stages within the same stage, best known to animals like the ones that have an exoskeleton. So this is our pupal stage. Now, this is our caterpillar stage. Now, the caterpillar stage has very key characteristics. One of them is the stage that is a lot of movement, a lot of distraction, but also a lot of feeding. Now, the quality and quantity of the feed of the caterpillar will determine whether the butterfly will be a complete organism, incomplete organism, a problematic organism, or fail to become a butterfly at all when they go to the resting stage. Now, in the same manner, for the issues matters faith, and I will use my faith, which is Christianity in this case. When the caterpillar stage, which is the stage we are in now, whatever we feed in, whatever we are taking up, whatever we are eating, will determine whether we reach the adult stage or not. Now, the next stage after the caterpillar stage is usually the resting stage, the pupa, of which now our transitions are, for the butterfly, it becomes a pupa which must get somewhere and hangs on in most of our materials. But for us, we must be buried or die. Basically, what we call death in the physical. Now, it is at that point that now you hear Christians claim, and now that you have a background of Christianity, you have heard the claim that there is resurrection, there is another life after death. Now, that is the adulthood stage after the pupal stage.
Okay.
And I hope I wanted to use a basic analogy from my background of science to bring rationale in that stage of the way from the womb or the egg all the way to the heaven or the adulthood stage.
All right. So Harrison, respond to that. Maybe his analogy is atheists are in a certain level, which is the stage where you now don't, you have not discovered God. Maybe you can respond to him in terms of that.
No. The issue is The issue is that the stage we are in now, this is the stage of caterpillar. All of us, whether you are atheist or Christian or Hindu, Muslim, the human being that you can interact and do the science that you are doing and eat the way you are eating, talk, laugh. This is the second stage after the egg stage.
Okay, so the question to him, which is the question?
I didn't ask a question. I was just brought an analogy.
Maybe
Also,
Harrison,
you're saying we are in a stage. Atheists are in a stage. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting human beings are in the second stage of development. From egg, the second stage is caterpillar for the butterfly, and for human beings is now this stage where
okay.
you are born, yeah, you are conceived, you are born until you die. Now at death, you go to the resting stage, which is the same for caterpillar. It goes to the pupa stage, the stage where it is resting somewhere, the resting
Can I
stage.
ask you a question? I've understood.
Okay.
Why do you think you have to use that butterfly example and not, for example, another insect? Because we also know that, for example, why can't you use a fish?
Why can't I use a fish?
Why are you choosing to use a caterpillar in particular? Because I can also use a fish to give an example of stages. So why do you choose a caterpillar in particular to explain where we are in terms of the stage and where we are going? Because I don't agree with you that the life of a butterfly before it gets to become a butterfly. I don't agree with you in the way you're staging life and using just one animal when we know we have so many animals that go through different stages, not necessarily the ones by a caterpillar. So I think that analogy cannot be taken seriously simply because it focuses on only the butterfly. I think we have to, if we are to give explanations of the stages of something as serious as life, we cannot use just one animal. We can't just use a butterfly. Life is more serious than that. Life has so many things. A butterfly is minimizing the complexity of life. The other thing is we really don't know what happens after we die because nobody has ever come back to life that we know. And even the story of Jesus, Jesus did not rise from the dead. I mean, this is what is written in the Bible. This is not a fact. If you look at the accounts of Jesus Christ, and if you look at the history of the historians who wrote about Jesus, there was no first-hand account of Jesus. In other words, when Jesus was alive, there was nobody who wrote a first-hand account of Jesus Christ. So we know as human beings. All of you know that death is death. You all know that when you die, resurrection is not something that is possible. That is the nature of life. So for you to even suggest that there is going to be life after death, you have to provide reasons why you think so. What we know is that life has no afterlife. There is nothing other than from the written text, other than from the written, what we call the written holy, so-called holy books. Those are the only books that tell us there's life after death. Otherwise, as human beings, we know there's no life after death. So I'm just challenging you in those two things. Right? The analogy, you cannot use the butterfly only when there are so many animals. And secondly, you cannot claim there's life after death when we know there's none.
Thank you, Harrison. I'll come to you.
Do you go first, or I can just, because mine will be just a short sentence.
Okay, maybe you can go.
Yeah, I just said the issue of life and coming back is what I said, that the butterfly cannot discuss that story backward to the caterpillar. When it comes to the issue of simplicity, I chose the insect butterfly because majority of people listening to this can relate to that, and it has been taught across board. So whether you left in class 4 or class 6, it is something you can relate to. And then there were only two animals in my example: the human being and the butterfly. So I used the concept called dichotomous key, where you only branch into two for looking into similarities to make clarity.
All right, thank you. I want to mention before I go to Ekesa to respond if there is God, and then I want Daniel to ask a question. But when you ask a question, please go straight to the point.
I'll also have some questions to ask at some point.
Sure, that's good. So if you want to join this conversation, is easy. Those who are saying they want to join, and it's not hard. It's very simple. You just hit the link, it takes you in. You will be able to ask all your questions. So Ekesa, Arizona said there is no God and there is no life after death, and there was no Jesus. Jesus did not resurrect. Can you respond? In a brief way.
I think for me, it's just one. He has said he has been a Christian. So I wanted to begin by saying, in a human heart, there is a God-shaped vacuum that you cannot fill with anything else except God himself. And that's why people who reject God will always come up with so many other theories to try to disapprove that it doesn't exist. But they are so into it that they want, they want to disapprove that it doesn't exist, but they are so into it, showing that there's something that they are seeking to understand about God. It's only that they have not understood. So let me use the analogy of Darwin, because I see part of his rational thinking comes from science. Darwin came up with, Darwin who talked about the evolution. Darwin came up with a postulation when he was talking about genetics. By that time, he didn't understand how genes look like, but he talked about there are factors, and he left them, and other scientists came and followed up the analogy until they discovered that those factors are now called genes. So within us, there is that. In fact, ask yourself, let's even remove the Christianity because it's dismissing Jesus. Ask yourself, how comes every cultural background has their own God? Nobody came and taught them. Every human being that have existed, there was a form of being they subscribed to and called as a God. Nobody taught people that you should understand there is a God, but within a human longing, they understood that there is a superior being, and that seeking for answers is what led to people come up with a God to worship. And because they didn't know, that's why God decided to reveal his own Jesus Christ. You asked us to have an evidence.
Can you ask?
Excuse me, you gave him a lot of time. We want to balance.
Okay.
You asked us to show any evidence of existence of God. Jesus is a perfect evidence that God existed because he manifested in human flesh. History records that he lived, and he died and he resurrected. So I don't know why you want to disqualify that. And for me, atheism is a rejection of belief. So it doesn't mean that the belief doesn't exist. It's only that you contend with it.
All right, good. Harrison, you can respond to that perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Wekesa. The first thing I'll say is that in the history of human beings, different communities and cultures have come up with their own ways of explaining the unknown. If you lived in Africa 300 years ago, there was no electricity. You didn't understand anything about the moon, the sun, why it rose from the east to the west. When there was thunder, when there was lightning, when there was rain, when there was a disease that came and killed your child or your daughter, if you lived 200 years ago, you were very ignorant. There was very little information about how things work. And so we have to understand that the reason why people came up with God, and if you go to Brazil, we have communities there that have their own gods. If you go to South Africa, we have communities there that they had their own gods. Even in Kenya, we had communities with their own gods. And the reason why there are different gods for different communities with different names, some are mountains, some are cows, some are rocks, is because human beings did not have an explanation. The only thing they could do is invent a God. And so I want to introduce you to the concept of invention of gods. All gods have been invented by human beings, including the Christian God. And the reason why, if you look at the Bible, look at the book of Genesis, it talks about creation story, where it says, and God said, let there be light. And then it goes and says, and there was light, and it was good. And then God goes ahead to create everything. He creates the sun, he creates the moon and the stars. Christianity is just a well-marketed religion. Otherwise, the basis of Christianity is explaining existence. There's not much difference between Christianity and what the Luyas used to believe 200 years ago, what the Kikuyus used to believe, worshipping Mount Kenya, facing Mount Kenya, what the Maasais used to believe. There is no much difference. All these are cultures that tried to explain the unknown. Now, what is happening is that we are now in an age of enlightenment. We are in an age of knowledge. We are in an age of science. So when you tell me, for example, that it is God who makes day and night, because the Bible says actually God is the one who makes day and night. So if you tell me it is God who makes us alive, you know, right now we have a lot of information. We now understand the body cells, the functioning of the heart. We understand even molecular elements like oxygen. We understand the world better. We understand the universe. We know that planets go around the earth. We know a lot about the universe than we knew 200 years ago. That is why we have a case of what I'll call a receding God, the God of the gaps, a God who has been explaining things for a long time, and now because science is explaining these things better, this God is receding from becoming an explanation for things. So for me, I think don't isolate Christianity and make it look more important than the traditional African mythology or traditional African gods. These two are basically the same, only that Christianity has been very well marketed. It has been actually forced upon us. We believe, personally, I used to be a Christian. It's because my father was a Christian. It's because my mom was a Christian. I was not given a chance to reflect on religion. Most Kenyans are religious because of their parents, because of their upbringing. Now, our challenge to Kenyans is that get out of that cocoon, start thinking for yourself. Now, the explanations that do not make Christianity look more important than our African gods. I actually would respect more an African who comes and says, I believe in Jehovah Wanyonyi. I respect that person more than the African who believes in a religion that was formed in Israel. We have no relationship with those guys. But nevertheless, all these religions are an attempt to explain the natural world, to explain how the world works. And today we have a lot of information. I'm challenging you that to understand, so you understand my point, that do not treat Christianity as a secluded religion. It's just one of the many religions that have tried to explain the natural world.
All right.
Maybe I think
you can respond. Okay.
Yeah. I think listening to my friend Harrison very well, he's not a true atheist. Either he's not a true atheist. A true atheist should disqualify existence of any God. He cannot have reservation for Christianity and glorify any other God, whether it's a God of the Hindu or God of the Luyas. Wait first. Wait, I finish. Wait, I finish. You have had your time. Huh? So I've listened to you very carefully, and I see you have a problem with Christianity, but you're not an atheist. You still believe they are gods, but you have a problem with the God of Christianity. I think that should be the point. That should be the discussion. Otherwise, there is no atheism here. Atheism
Okay,
should
let me
disqualify. And I began by telling you that within a human nature, there is a longing for God. And that's why even you yourself have explained very well and told us that in historically that human beings did not have something to explain the source of livelihood, and then therefore they came up with God. Who created that longing? It's just the same way you can have a longing to have an association with opposite sex. Who brings you understand that you need to relate. So who brings the longing for spirituality in a human being?
All right.
Okay,
You have a right of reply. Please reply to him in terms of, you are the artist here, so reply.
Yes, I'm going to be very brief, and let me just recognize the presence of Francis Maende, who is the vice chairperson of the Atheists in Kenya Society. I'm very glad that he's here. So I think we now we are balanced, so that any of these, Francis, please, if you see any errors in the argument, please point them out very quickly, because I'm already dealing with around 5 errors. But let me say this.
Right.
Let me say this, that I do recognize that gods have existed, and I do not mean that true gods have existed. I mean deities. I mean people have come up with. So, for example, I could say that Mount Kenya, if I was a Kikuyu, I would say my grandmother used to believe that God resides on top of Mount Kenya, and that is how they understood their God. Now, I recognize that. I do appreciate that. You see, I am not saying, when I say that cultures, it doesn't mean that I do believe in those gods myself. It just means that I do appreciate that cultures and societies have invented gods. I'll give you another example. We have had Greek gods, people like Zeus. We have Indians who worship even rats. They take rats to be very sacred. I recognize that. That does not mean I believe that those rats are now actual gods. A rat is not a god. A rat is a rat. Now, the god of what I was just making, my point was, and when you're saying I'm not a true atheist, I want to now explain who I am. I am an atheist. I don't believe in the existence of a supernatural concept called God, who created us, who is in charge of what happens around, who is going to punish us if we don't believe in him, who created Adam and Eve, for example, in the case of a Christian God. I don't believe in those supernatural concepts. I don't. And the reason mainly is because really there's not much evidence for those kind of beliefs. So do not describe me, because you don't know me. You cannot say I'm not a true atheist, because I can also say you're not a true believer, and I don't know you. So I think I am an atheist, and by recognizing various gods does not mean I believe in them. These are gods that have existed in various cultures. I really want to make that point clear, so that you don't come and tell me that I have a problem with Christianity alone. Even Jehovah Wanyonyi, if I went to Kakamega and found somebody saying that Jehovah Wanyonyi is going to take them to heaven, I'll have a problem with that. And by the way, I have quite a number of problems with Christianity, because right now in Africa, Christianity is the one religion that is impacting on our political life, our social life, our families. We have a situation in Africa where Christianity seems to permeate in every part of our life, our education system. So I have a problem with the extent to which Christianity is impacting on our basic thoughts. And as a society, you find, for example, the government calling for a national prayer day to pray for COVID-19, using taxpayers' money. My money is being used to pray for COVID-19. That is unacceptable. I would rather my money is taken to research, to a research institution, to look for a solution that is based on science for COVID-19.
All right.
I have relatives who go for Prophet Awards, is it crusades or what? I have relatives who worship.
Kindly, let's not mention names. Let's just be
okay. It's okay.
Prophet Award is a public prophet.
All right. Yeah, he has a right to mention names, huh? Okay?
But they are not here for response.
No, for you cannot, but for him he can. Huh?
I'm just saying, Prophet, everybody knows Prophet Award. When I say I have relatives, they even send me videos of Prophet Award telling me, please come to Prophet Award's crusade. All I'm saying here is that I have a problem with Christianity, and I think that is still that's an argument I can make. And but let's proceed.
Yeah, I wanted to give Daniel a chance to ask a question, but it seems he left. Yeah, since he left, maybe I want to your VP now to introduce himself. I also want to say those who were saying they want to ask questions to Harrison, it's very easy to ask. Just join and ask your question. So maybe Francis, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Francis, or CMO, mind. The VP AIK. I would like to just first point out something that Wekesa said. He was insinuating that there is that longing of a human being to have a spirit being, but at the same time, if you tell me today this is true, and you want me to believe that this is the truth and nothing but the truth, then we will believe in everything that we have all over the world. So as Harrison said, man made God because they felt the need to have that person. It's the same way Santa exists. Yeah, so you tell me that, then Santa actually exists. If you are trying to convince me, then actually I will tell you, then Santa and the Easter Bunny, they exist. Yeah, yes. So I guess that longing, no, it's not logical.
Okay, thank you, Francis, for that perspective. I want to give opportunity for Daniel to ask a question to Harrison.
Yeah.
Daniel?
Can you hear me now? I had a problem with my connections.
It's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand. I guess this is a question that is asked many times. How does it describe the origin of man? A simple one where Atheists are asked about the alphabet and the shuffling and the idea of it forming any word that is sensible, and the chances that it forms anything that is sensible is a question that is asked to them quite often. I'd like to hear his explanation on that. One, his idea of faith. What is faith according to him? Two, the issue of where man came from. Just from his understanding, then we can get to the next question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think you're asking about two things, the issue of faith and the origin of man, right?
Yeah, he's asking that.
Those are the two things we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I'll start with the issue of origin. And I can tell you, being somebody who believes in science, in essence, what I do believe in is that science provides the best way of understanding the natural world. At the moment, there is no scientist, there is no human being who understands the origin of life. I can tell you that there is nobody who knows how life began. Not me, not the scientists who are studying that, and not religious people. Nobody knows. What we have is we have explanations for how the diversity of life. So if you want to understand how, for example, we have giraffes, we have insects, we have cows, we have plants, how we have living organisms and how diverse they are, then that that has been explained by the evolution theory. The evolution theory explains the diversity of life. It explains why monkeys exist, why human beings exist, why dogs exist, why we have the diversity of life across the world. But if you go to the basic question of how life began, there is nobody who has an explanation about how life began. I've been looking at the theories that scientists are trying to postulate about this. There are several scientists who are saying, for example, I'll give you one, that there was an environment that was conducive for life, and molecules came together, and these molecules, through a process of chemical reaction, produced the first replicating cellular organism. But then again, this is just a theory. It is not confirmed that is how life began. What I can tell you is that nobody really knows about how the first life form began. But we have some information which is really useful. For example, we know that life has existed on Earth for more than 3 billion years. That is really useful information. We also know that evolution is a fact. For example, that human beings in our current form, we have only existed for about 300,000 years. So we can easily do away with the idea that we were created, because that for an atheist, for me, it has come to a point where the creation theory does not make a lot of sense, because the creation theory is based on a supernatural person, entity that wished existence into being, wished everything into being. Now let me go to your second question. You're talking about faith. I don't believe in faith as a way of understanding things. For example, I don't believe that I have to have faith in things. If I want to look for a job, if I'm unemployed and I want to look for a job, my approach would be to look for a job, not to have faith that I'll get a job. If I'm unwell, if I'm sick, I will not say that I have faith that I will get well. So faith for me is a concept that I don't accept. I think it's a very, very dangerous concept. If you have faith in things, it's very dangerous. If you have a wife who is cheating on you, and you keep telling people, I have faith that my wife is faithful, but then there's evidence to the contrary, you can see where the problem with faith will be. Faith is not a good way of arriving at an understanding of things. So that's over my.
Harrison, let's go. Sorry, Harrison.
All right, proceed.
That you're describing. Let's go beyond that issue of simple faith of believing in something. I'm talking about you came there and you sat on that seat, and you knew that that seat would hold you. There are things that we do. We don't have the basic facts, but we actually do them. I'm talking about that kind of faith. The faith that not necessarily that I have a little just difference in terms of what a lot of people believe in faith. But I'm talking about you came there, you sat there, you take a fruit, and from your scientific background, you say that fruit will give you whatever that you need. That's also a form of faith. But coming back to that, we're saying that I want to come back to what you said, that, and what also your friend Francis Masinde said, that we cannot push and I'm not accusing you of pushing your faith to ourselves, but I'm also saying that.
But Patrick, I think there's a problem.
Yes, please. Can you ask? I'm sorry, he has some problem. Can you maybe make it simple and asking the question, because there's some other people who want to ask their main. Okay.
Okay, sorry. I just want to talk about the issue of limited. Human beings are limited, and the issue of faith. He sat there. He sat and he knew the seat would hold him. We cannot run away from those particular facts, and also we cannot explain just the existence in that simple way of things happened. And sorry, I might have lost it.
Okay,
my comment.
It's okay. I'm sorry, before Harrison you mentioned, I will say those who are trying to access, it's very, just join, and then I'll bring you in to ask the question. Okay, Harrison, continue.
Okay, when he was talking, I think the network on his side is not very clear.
Yes.
So, I don't know. Can he briefly,
Yeah, let
just?
me put it the way he was saying. He said when you came, there was a belief you had by sitting just there. So he wants you to tell us in terms of belief. There is faith that you sat in that seat, you knew it will hold you. So that's already a belief. So maybe what do you think about that?
Oh yeah. So I think I have sat on other seats that have actually fallen and have actually been hurt. It is not all seats that I've sat on that have been very stable. So I did sit on this seat because I have faith that it will not break up. No, I think it is a question of habit for me. Over a period of time, I've made an observation that whenever I come to sit on this seat, over a period of time, so it's basically based on observation and experience, that over a period of time, this seat has provided me with a sense of stability whenever I sit. And because of that experience and observation, I have come to the point where I am comfortable sitting on this seat. It's not a matter of faith. It's actually based on observation and experience. And I think this is the difference between we atheists and believers. Believers actually put a lot of capital on faith, and they tell you they have faith in God. For me, I am more inclined towards experience and observation, those two. So, for example, if I tell you that inside this water, this bottle, there is wine. If I tell you that there is wine inside this water bottle, and this question is directed to Daniel, would you have faith that there is wine here?
All right, Daniel, you can.
I would revert back to yourself in terms of observation and experience.
No, I'm just asking a question. I would like you to respond. If I tell you that inside this water bottle, I have red wine, would you believe me?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know whether there is or not.
No, if I told you,
I might believe you based on how I know you. If I trust you,
no,
probably
right now you don't know me. I'm saying right now you don't know me. You have just met, and I tell you there is wine in this bottle. Would you believe me?
I wouldn't know. I would reserve my. I mean, I don't know whether there is or not.
Okay.
Yes.
You say they will not.
Would you? If I told you to have faith that there is wine inside this bottle, would you have that faith?
I say it's very subjective. That particular question is very subjective to a lot of things.
I'm just doing a small experiment to show you that faith is a very bad way of understanding things. And that is why the same way I'm asking about the water bottle with the wine inside is the same way when you tell me I have to have faith in a God. To me, that does not count as a way of understanding things. And for me, I have to open this bottle and I have to pour the water or the wine and taste it for me to know there is wine. But anybody coming to tell me that I have to have faith in what is in this bottle is not helping me. And the problem we have with religion is that they are teaching faith. You people are teaching that people have to have faith in the unknown. And we are challenging that. We are saying that we need a new way of understanding knowledge in this country. And it's very unfortunate that we are discussing faith. Faith is the most dangerous thing that we can use to understand knowledge. And that is why people right now, you remember the time of HIV/AIDS, people used to go to Loliondo to drink water because a pastor just came, some religious guy just came and told them, this water cures. That is why we have science. Science has to test everything. We want something that is testable, that we can experience, that we can believe in.
All right. I want to go to Alphonse, and then I'll come to you, Ekesa. Let's go to Alphonse. You can actually maybe respond as well as ask the question to Harrison. But in terms of science and what the role of science in this faith, the Bible, maybe that's where I want you to focus.
First, I think we need to be very clear. I don't have a question to ask him because most of the things he has shared are inconsistent. Number one, he's talking of evidence. I think it is clear that his focus is on evidence. You cannot use biological evidence to explain chemistry. You cannot use economic evidence to explain social. And you cannot use social evidence to explain faith. Now, if you are going to the lab, I don't know whether you're using chemistry, biology, or physics to explain spiritual issues, then of course the results are wrong before you even start the project or the process. Now, the other issue is today you'll go to court and lose a case, not because you are wrong, but because your method of evidence gathering and presentation was wrong. So what I was expecting you to tell me here is maybe the presentation that Christians have presented in specific things has not been satisfactory to you, so that I hear what is it that we need to satisfy you. That's why I personally used the example of butterfly from the beginning to explain the issue of life after death, so that the life is a continuous process. Now, let me go to the next thing. You're asking a question about will we have faith or believe if the bottle has wine? Now, that one does not require another research, because the only question is what is the definition of faith? And don't go to any religion. It is a word in English. So can we go to the dictionary? What does the word faith mean? So if you look at the word faith in this case, the word faith means complete trust or confidence in someone or something. If you're a liar, why should we have faith in what you're telling us? If we have known, over time, we have known every time you say, everything you say is a lie, we will not believe you. But every time if you tell us something that is true and you are holding it in your hand, why should I start doubting you?
Now, why should I believe you? Why should I believe you? And for example, you, I don't know whether you are a liar. I don't know whether you are a honest person.
Thank you.
Tell me that I should believe in a God,
please,
and I don't know whether you are a liar.
Give him time. You hate your time.
You now to listen, because one of the things, this is a discussion and it's not an argument. You have talked, and I'm very certain that you have heard that I was very silent, not because I didn't have points of interjection. Now, if you have known, you have ascertained that this person has chronically been lying, then the curve, if it's mathematics or physics or chemistry or biology, has indicated that this person is having a depreciating curve in terms of saying the truth. So in this case, you must verify everything he says. And therefore, there's a concept called trust, but verify. Then you go for verification. So you can tell the truth by telling us what you're showing us, or lie to us. So you have a choice to make. Now, this one does not necessarily mean that everybody who will say the same statement with the same bottle will be lying. But the character issue will be on board. Now, you have said about the beginnings of life or origin of life. I don't know what you understand by science and theory, because every scientific fact is based on a scientific theory. So in fact, the thing that scientists are now fighting is to ask themselves a question: which one precedes the other? Is it that theory precedes practicals, or practical precedes theory? Which one comes before the other? But they are always intertwined and together. So whenever you have a theory like nebula cloud theory explaining how the origin of life is, and we have, for example, another Big Bang theory, then scientists who don't believe in the contrary will believe in this. Now, what I am challenged with is that you want us to believe in scientific facts in a context that is not scientific. If you are doing sociology, the way of carrying out sociological evidence or collecting sociological evidence is totally different. And that's why even in the field of science, we have physical sciences and social sciences. if somebody tells you I know how to draw, and you have seen them draw very good drawings or paint very good paints, do you know there is no factual evidence that there's a way in which people should hold a pen and give a good drawing?
Okay. Thank you.
Just
Okay.
hold on, Kidogo. Just hold on, Kidogo, Patrick, because we have listened to Harrison, to be honest. Now, the issue that we have here is in atheism, they have a purpose, and their purpose is committed in promoting secular, humanist, and rationalistic worldview. I think I'm right on that, Francis Mende. Now, if you look at each and every word, the first thing they're promoting is secular. Now, secular simply means working very hard to ensure non-existence of God in language, not in science. So, if you don't believe strongly, completely in non-existence of any religious form. Now, in science, that we call it null hypothesis. So when you come up with a null hypothesis and you confirm that it is null, you get asked what is the positive side. Now, if you have confirmed there's no God, what is there in replacement? Now that God, being on a spiritual aspect of life, is not scientific, whether biological or physical or chemical in nature. So where have you confirmed? So what is your final position on that one? And lastly, I want to say that I think when we are discussing matters of God, we most of the time go antagonistic with the people who have not taken time to read various things. So that when you now supersede them in literature, you feel you supersede them in knowledge in that aspect, and therefore they are null and void. There are people who know how to raise families, but have never gone to a parenting school. They didn't have money, but they raised very good families. So there are those things that in language and mathematics, we call them intrinsic. They have what we call intrinsic value. The value that cannot be measured, cannot be quantified, and cannot have a proportionate qualitative conclusion. But we can see the result. Mine, I was epileptic. I was not, I had have somebody else. Myself, I was epileptic up to 1990. From 1990 to date, I've not suffered from epilepsy. There are no miracles. Again, what is the definition of miracle in language? Now that the miracle is a word in language, what is the definition of it? And confirm if there is no miracle in my situation.
Okay. All right. Maybe Harrison respond to him, but after Harrison response, I want to go to Bernard to ask the question. I know, Wekesa, you have a very wrong perspective, but just hold on. Yeah? I'm sorry. Harrison, respond.
Yeah, so, my friend Alphonse has said quite a number of things. I'll just try and pick on a few that maybe are more salient. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you're talking about science, let me start by saying that scientists don't agree on everything. And by the way, when you talk about a theory, a scientific theory, before the theory becomes widely accepted, there's a lot of debate about it, and there's a lot of testing about it before it becomes acceptable as a theory. So when I talk about, for example, the theories that scientists have come up with to explain the existence of life, there's still a lot of debate in that area. I've looked at several theories I've been reading, and there's what we call the primordial soup theory, where it is believed that there was some sort of environment with some water, with some chemicals that give rise to life. But that theory is not, it doesn't have a lot of consensus in the scientific world. So I think with regard to what science is and what theory is, I totally understand what it is. The Newton laws of motion, for example, those are theories which have been tested and they are now widely accepted. But there are some we do not agree. Even in science, scientists don't agree on everything. What they do, they build upon the theories to a point where it can be widely accepted through testing and through basically through testing and looking at whether the results are consistent. I want to talk about, I'll just pick some areas which I picked because you said a number of things. I was just trying to note them down. Yes, we do promote a rationalistic worldview, and we think that that is the best way of understanding the natural world. I gave an example of this mug, and I asked whether there is water here or wine, and I was challenging the whole concept of faith. That's what I was doing. But to be rational is to ask questions. If you're not satisfied with an answer, ask questions. That is all we are saying. In this country, we have freedom of worship and we have freedom of belief. So, fortunately, we are not trying to get religion out of public sphere. But in terms of politics, we think that our politics should not be infused with religion. We also think our education system should not be infused with religion. We think that the running of government should not be run on the basis of religion. Decisions that affect Kenyans should not be based on any religious or even superstitious position. And that is why we are promoting secularism, a separation of the running of government from the religious principles and aspects. Unfortunately, since independence, this is what has been happening. The public sphere is infused, and running of government is infused with religion. You go to public offices, we have prayers. You go to government, we have public prayer days. We want to bring an end to this. We think that religion should be kept far from the running of government, and that is what secularism is, and that is what we are trying to push for. Otherwise, you have your right to belief under the Constitution. Article 32 is very clear on the right of belief and the right of worship and things like those. I think finally I'll talk about, I may have missed on a number of things, but let me talk about your epilepsy. You're saying you were epileptic in 1990, and you were asking whether it was a miracle. As far as I'm concerned, if you say it was a miracle, you're just making a claim. A miracle, how? By who? You know, what shows that what you went through is a miracle? To the best of my understanding, the definition of a miracle is still goes back to superstition. Miracle is the happening of something that cannot be explained by natural phenomena. So you say that it is a miracle because you don't understand exactly what happens. It looks like a miracle to you. We are against those kind of explanations for things. We have to understand that epilepsy, we understand the biology of it. I'm not a doctor, but I know epilepsy is a medical condition. When you become non-epileptic for one reason or the other, there has to be a biological explanation to it. What we are seeing in this country is religious people taking advantage of people becoming well, even if the explanation is that they have good immunity, even if the explanation is that there was they had cancer, but the cancer was for some reason it was, there's a term that is used for cancer that is you have cancer then you don't have it. There's a term that is used for that. I've forgotten it. But what I'm saying is we should not have a situation where we use the term miracles to explain things that we don't understand. Your epilepsy was a biological condition, and what you should be asking is what biological things happened, what biological things happened in my body that right now I do not have epilepsy. Meanwhile, you could still get epilepsy again. We don't know. You have to go to a doctor to try and ensure that there is no chance of you getting epilepsy. The idea of a miracle for us does not make sense. So I just needed to make those ones clear. I know there could be other things I've not responded to, but as the discussion moves on, I'll pick them up. I think you talked about something to do with the evidence in terms of we cannot use social evidence for this and that. But I think that there is also a rational way of understanding whether something makes sense. I think, forget about evidence. There's also being rational about things. If you go to court, you're also supposed to make logical and rational arguments. It's not just about evidence. If your arguments don't make sense, if they're not rational, if they're not logical, still your case can be thrown out.
All right. So, Alphonse, respond quickly. Yes.
Yeah, I've just made an observation. It's not necessarily a response. And what I will say is that, you see, when we use the word miracle, we are using it in English. Now, the word miracle being a term in the language, we need to understand. Let's not go to religion. Let's just go to the language itself and ask these people, when they came with this term, what was the meaning? And you can use the books like dictionary to give us explanation. And you will find out that most of the meanings attached to the terms, whether it is faith, whether it's secular, whether it is miracle, most of it is in response to somebody's action and not necessarily to the origin of that word. And I think that's where we go wrong. Because if you understand the meaning of the word, then you will say you are using the word wrongly if you don't agree with the context.
What is the meaning of miracle to you? Maybe you can just.
I'd like to say something about that. I don't know if you'll allow me.
Okay, Francis.
Patrick?
Okay. Just say something.
Okay. Number one, Alphonse, yes, the word miracle is an English word, meaning that you cannot, it's a happening or an event that you cannot explain, something that has no explanation, probably because we've not been able to understand exactly what goes on there. So it's like saying a flood is a miracle. A flood is not a miracle. Things like that. But anyway, what I wanted to say is that in terms of epilepsy cannot just, we cannot say that it's cured. Yeah. As a medic, we know very well that the brain cells take up to 10 years to heal. And if in an instance like this, the epilepsy is most of the time, we don't understand exactly where the damage in the brain is. So whenever now the brain heals itself after a very long time, and somebody can, maybe somebody had a brain injury during as a child, and at this time that they heal after some time, they start saying there's a miracle, something has happened. No, nothing like that happened. It's just a natural phenomenon, what we call homeostasis.
Okay.
I was talking, and then Francis wanted to talk. That's why I paused. But you see, the definition of miracle cannot be explained by natural or scientific laws. The question, therefore, in your rationality, which is part of what you are anchored on, are these the only laws? Once we understand such a situation, we are able to understand. Because you see, the main challenge that I have here is the fact that you are saying there are laws, but the only thing that should not exist is supernatural laws. Yeah. So that is where the backbone of most of this issue is. And the truth be told, when you are going for science, you don't go to search for truth, you go to search for facts. When you go to supernatural things, you don't go to search for facts, you go to search for truth. So when you put a scale of truth versus fact, there is a lot of differences, because one is in the supernatural, the other one is in the natural. So the starting point in itself will just put you off. If you are so much supernatural, you don't connect the two, you think that they are disconnected. If you are too much natural, you will also disconnect it from the supernatural. So I think we need to really be very cautious and keen, including the specific books. I'm very sure I have not quoted a specific verse in the Bible here. And when I introduced myself, as much as I said I am Christian, I also gave my background as a pure scientist. I've done science only, and I focus and bias in biological sciences. And so far, I've said, I think what we need is to understand the meaning of the terms we use and use them in their context, as opposed to the context of the somebody we want to argue against until we put them down.
All right. I want to bring a question from Bernard, but I want now, after this, Wekesa, when I come to you, I want to focus on human rights and especially about freedom of worship, freedom of speech. All right. So Bernard, you can go. Unmute your mic, Bernard. All right.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, sorry, I've just joined very late and I found the discussion ongoing. And I think I found Mr. President on some point along the way. And I have to state that I was studying the Bible before I joined this discussion. And it is very, very interesting for me to listen to Mr. Harrison explaining things that as at now, I may not be in a position exactly to ask him a specific question. So you'll allow me to continue listening to him because I found the discussion ongoing, but I will ask him questions probably after Mr. Eric has talked.
Okay, yeah. Good. That's fine. So Wekesa, so we move to, sorry, let me, okay, good. Let's move to the question of human rights, as well as freedom of speech and freedom of worship. As atheists, the question should focus on, do they have a right in this society to worship without being questioned?
Okay. Yeah, so maybe sometimes we wonder whether atheists worship or they don't worship. But as I've listened to him, actually there is a script he's pushing. He's saying this one should not be in government, but this one should be. Actually, he's pushing for secular religion to take part of government and the non-religions to take a back seat. And so in one way, he wants to advocate for the freedom of worship, but in another way, he wants also to infringe on the worship of others. But my concern will be, why is it that the things that look not very harmful, the religious activities that are happening that doesn't look harmful, atheists have a problem with? But the issues that even don't make sense, like gayism, they have a way of promoting it. And you ask yourself, is actually atheism having an agenda to destroy the family as a fabric of the society? Because you cannot advocate for things like gayism and tell us, and in their own explanation, they say there's a way people are oriented to be gays, but they don't see that somebody is oriented to be spiritual. They don't see that somebody is oriented to worship a God, but they see somebody is oriented to have gayism, lesbianism. Then at the back of my mind, I know that there is an agenda they are driving, and we have to be very careful. We accept that everybody has a right in Kenya, but we also have to look at our rights are anchored in the Constitution. When we look at Chapter 4 of our Constitution, talks about family. It defines what is a family. A family is made up of two people who come from opposite sex. That is our constitutional definition of a family. But these guys don't want to such definitions. They want to come up with their own other definitions because of lost values. They want to import lost values from the West and tell us these are scientific and rational thinking. No, these are lost morals, and we must, as a society, we need to be moral. We must define our moral standards. And as Africans, we cannot say that Africans' moral standards are wrong and the Western moral standards are the ones we need to help. We need to desist from that, because that is a part of the things they are driving is this morality from the West, and covering it in terms of science. When we all know that us, even believers, the Christians, we are scientists, and we know our God has no problem with science. And we have not even locked our minds and say that we are promoting this scientific theory. I know that as a Christian, I am acted upon by the force of gravity. Just because I am a Christian doesn't mean that gravity doesn't act on me. Just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean that hunger doesn't inbound on me. So we are human beings. We understand there is also spiritual science, political science, social science. So for them, they are limiting us unto one section of science that they are calling secularism. But for me, I will tell you, if I'm in spiritual science, if I'm talking about faith, I will tell you faith is cumulative. I will tell you faith is practical. That if I have done this thing once and twice, I am certain that it will occur again, and it happens because faith has its own scientific definition. So the fact that you have not gone deep into spiritual matters and understood that there is science behind even spiritual matters, you don't disqualify what you don't know. And yeah, so that's what I'm saying. And then in terms of our constitution and rights, I want my friend to tell me why exactly should we promote gayism?
All right. I want both of them to answer, because Francis and Harrison, but I want Francis to answer in terms of family, since I saw he has a lovely daughter. So you will answer both the question about that, where is a woman and a man has to come together so that they have such kind of life. And then Harrison will focus about maybe rights on gayism and the rest.
Okay, in terms of the family, yes, we've not said like it's just two people that are coming together, because if you're talking about a family being a husband, two people of the opposite sex only, and to have children and such, then adoption is a totally wrong thing then. Yeah, that's what I will tell you. Then it's all about allowing people, because believe you me, everybody has their own brain. You cannot think for me, I cannot think for you. Yes, if my brain has been I call it, as a medic, I don't call it wired, I call it accustomed to a certain lifestyle. You've gone ahead and had a certain lifestyle in such a way that you are you want to be you are attracted to the opposite to the same sex. It's your problem. I should not be judging you. The difference here is advocating for this is to allow people not to be judged, because the society we are in, if you push that religious agenda in the constitution, then you are criminalizing people who have issues. If it's like telling me a gay is, to me, a gay person has a mental problem. It's a small mental problem, but they can be able to handle it. Yes. So it's the same thing telling me anybody who has a mental problem should be locked down, or should be killed, or should not be allowed to live, or should be jailed. Why? You need to give these people, they have their own rights. Instead, treat them right, allow them to live the way they are, allow them to do whatever they like, so that they have an element of a normal life. It's like telling me I have been amputated one of thy legs. I have to adapt. It is the same thing that the brain does. It is a thing that happens in somebody's life that makes them be the way they are. So it's allowing them to do whatever they want. I'm not
Yes.
supposed to control anybody's sexuality. No one should. The constitution should not. And advocating for a secular type of a constitution is to allow freedom. It's not infringing on anybody's freedom. Saying as saying like we should remove that clause in the constitution. The thing is to stop giving people an idea that this is a certain type of religious country. Then where do we place the others, the other religions? Because it's basically Christian. Where do we put Buddhists? Do we put other deities? So yeah.
Excuse me. I
Okay.
think I have a right of response. I think he did not understand me. I talked about the constitution allows the marriage, and the marriage described in our constitution is opposite sex. There's nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with Kenyan values. When you read part 10 of Kenyan values, they tell you what are Kenyan values. These were agreed as Kenyan values, not Christian. Kenya is not a Christian state. So there is nothing in the constitution that is Christian. All are values that were agreed by the makers of the constitution when they asked consensually what Kenyans believe in and what they don't believe in. Let me also point out something. When you tell me that that is people's orientation, so are we going to another state and say, why should we even arrest robbers? That is their own orientation. They are oriented to steal. Why should we have a problem with the prostitutes? That is their orientation. Why should we even have a problem with people who abuse others? Because that is and those who lie, those who cheat. That is their orientation. So if we are losing morals and then we say there's nothing like morals, everybody should do what they think they can do and nobody should impose their own sanctions on others. Everybody to live the way they want to live.
Okay.
Morality, no. I'd like to finish that up. Morality is all about the way it's a humane thing. So talking about robbers and the rest, those are harming. That is if I'm harming you, that should not be accepted. But this is a person who's having a relationship with somebody. It's like is it right to have rape? That's the question. Is it right? No, it's not. It's not. Some of these things, I think the definition of morality is the problem. So you need to first go back and define morality. Number two, yes, people sat down, agreed on some things, and they decided these are the Kenyan values, or these are the values we want to follow. So let me ask you, that time there was how many people were involved? That's the first thing. How many people were involved? Number two, was there modernity? Was there all these things that have happened in this lifetime? Yeah, is it the same? Then if we had Kenyan values, then that is way back, isn't it? Now, why are we changing our stands on other things? Why do we change? Why do we allow to change our constitution? Why do we allow to change the way of governance and things like that? Then we should go back to our chiefs and barazas at home. We stop having these other hierarchies. Why do we have an economy? Then we should go back to the bush and start hunting. It's all about changing with time. We are evolving. This is evolution. Even the tiniest thing of evolution you're supposed to see is the lifestyle in the 80s, in the 60s, in the 50s, even in the 18th century. And now it's totally different. You cannot expect the way people were living back then will be the same right now. It's totally different.
Okay, maybe okay, so it will go back and forth, back and forth. I just want Harrison to continue, but
Yes.
you want maybe can you make it brief so that we?
Let me
Yeah, in
respond
one
to
sentence, I'm saying
Mm.
they told about us to be rational. Now, why is it that human beings are not rational? That God, every animal knows that relationship is between two opposite sex. Why is only human being who's not rational? Are we losing something as human beings?
All right,
You've
so
not seen other animals.
maybe let Harrison pick it from there.
Yeah, so there's nothing such as Kenyan values. Let me just correct Wekesa. There's nothing such as Kenyan values. What we have is what we call shared Kenyan values. Shared Kenyan values. And these shared Kenyan values are always undergoing discussion, conversation, change. And that is why Mayende talked about the evolution of values. Our values are always evolving. We passed a constitution in 1963. We didn't even pass it. It was just taken from the UK. Then we came and adopted it. We realized it does not work for Kenya. We sat down, and the time we sat down to write a new constitution, Constitution 2010, unfortunately, the Atheists in Kenya society did not exist by then. And that is why the definition in the Kenyan constitution for family is a wrong definition. We have written to the Constitutional Review Committee that was set up, what we are calling the BBI committee. We have proposed that the definition of family be broadened so that it says it is not between a man and a woman, that family is not between a man and a woman. It is between two consenting adults. These are very, very significant proposal because the narrow scope that Wekesa and the rest look at as a definition of family is wrong. You have to familiarize yourselves with the difference between gender and sex. Sex is you having a penis and your girlfriend having a vagina. But gender is a totally different issue. If you're a student of genetics, you'll understand that there is research right now. There is research today that shows that gender has to do with genetics. We were taught in school that XX chromosomes give rise to a female and XY chromosomes give rise to a male. But as research continues in this area, we are realizing that you can have a person with a female genitalia, who is exhibiting characteristics of a male person. The characteristics we know, which basically means that you cannot define that person as female in terms of gender. So I think what we are seeing is a situation where the likes of Wekesa are trying to again, Wekesa, I think you don't totally appreciate how far we have come with our understanding of issues to do with gender and sex. I would urge you to read more about that so that you don't limit your scope of what you understand by marriage. Let me talk about gays. Wekesa, what is your problem if two men decide to live together? What is your problem? You tell me. What problem do you have, you yourself? You went out there, you got your wife. You talked to your wife, you gave him chocolates, you gave him sweet words, and he accepted to sleep with you. And now you went to church and you married him. If me as Mumia, I meet Mayende and I love Mayende, and I say, Mayende, come and be my wife, what is your problem? Where would you come in? Why am I not interfering in your affair, you and your wife, but you want to police all the Kenyans you want to come with a religious morality of yours to tell us that, you know what, we need to adopt the Christian understanding of what marriage is. We need to adopt a Christian understanding of what values is. We reject Christian morality. Our morality has always to be an issue that we all agree upon. If you are happy with your wife and you're happy calling yourself a family, me and Maende, we should also be allowed to call ourselves a family without you trying to impose your definition of a family on us. And therefore, our opposition as atheists in Kenya society on the gays is that they need to be given their rights to be gays. And that is not about watering down our values. You said something here that I find very, very inconsistent. Huh? You said that that we are importing values from the West. So for you, gayism is a Western value. You don't realize that Christianity has nothing to do with Africans. It was brought here by the colonialists, and this is now Africans like you and others are worshiping Jehovah. We knew nothing about Jehovah as Africans. 200 years ago, we never knew anything about the Bible. Now you are basically arguing, and this is a very wrong argument, that sexual orientation is Western. When we say gay rights, that is Western. Christianity is the most non-African thing we are exhibiting as Africans today. And as an African, as a fellow African, as an African like you, I feel insulted that you are exalting a foreign religion. And then when it comes to issues of human rights, because gender is a human rights issue, it's not a Western issue, it's a human rights issue. And the governments that have allowed gay rights in Kenya are the progressive democracies that recognize this is a human rights issue. Religion, for a long time, and let me say this because for the purposes of those who are religious, religion has been the biggest impediment to the progress of human rights in the world. Right from the time when the Catholic faith was the mainstream faith, anybody who was challenging the Catholic faith was hanged. Some of them were arrested. Even the scientific advancement we are making today, if it was 200 years ago, the church and the state were so much together that if you did anything that was contrary to the church in terms of values, they would come after you. It is only fortunate that we live in the 21st century where we have gone through enlightenment, where now we have gone through a scientific revolution, and so we are where we are. We should be very happy. And remember, by the way, Wekesa, we live in a global world. This is no longer the world of the Luyas and the Luos and the Kikuyus. The world has become a global sort of village. I want you to appreciate that there is nothing Western. There is no values that are Western and African today. We are moving toward a situation where we are saying that whatever values we agree on, they should be best for humanity, not for Luyas, not for Christians, not for Muslims, but for humanity. We are in support of gay rights. Let me go to something else you said. You're saying God has no problem with science. I picked that right from your mouth, that God has no problem with science. Let me tell you something. The moment you believe in prayer, the moment you have a belief in heaven, the moment you believe in things like hell, in things like blessings, in things like curses, the moment you threaten people that they have to believe in Jesus for them to go to heaven, or they won't see everlasting life, you are running away from science. Atheists in Kenya is against the idea that we need to rely on those kind of notions as a way of promoting knowledge and understanding of the world. We are rooting for a rational, logical, scientific, evidence-based approach to an understanding of things. That is why the Constitution right now has to go through some sort of reforms. We have put forward some proposals because if you look at the Constitution, it begins with the words, we the people of Kenya believing in the supremacy of God Almighty. That was put by the religious majority who participated in the writing of the 2010 Constitution when the Atheists in Kenya society was not registered. Today, we are in objection of the idea of lumping everybody in one basket as religious. The census 2017 that was done, 2017 census, 2019, sorry, census. If you just Google, you will see that the country has over 700,000 atheists or people who define themselves as non-religious. You cannot ignore that population when you're talking about a constitution that's supposed to bring everybody together. So this, what I'm seeing from what Professor is saying, is a concept called religious privilege, where for a long time, you have been the ones defining for us values, you've been the ones defining for us what needs to go into the education system, you've been defining for us, like Ezekiel Mutua, what we should see on TV, and you think that your values are what we want. We are now saying that we have to have a conversation. You and your Christian values, we also have what we consider values. Gay rights, for example, are a serious thing, and you cannot say that because you oppose gay rights, then we are all supposed to just follow because you're a religious person or because you're a pastor. Pastors are also known to be corrupt. Pastors are also known to be immoral. Pastors are known to be people who cheat on their wives. We cannot take that religious privilege which you've had, bring it down. We want to bring it down. We want to destroy it because we want to have a situation where we are coming on the table as human beings, discussion. And that is a very important thing I have to say. Thank you.
Let Alphonse go first.
Mwambie azishike moto sana. We are just debating. Azishike moto sana.
I love the passion.
These things are very passionate, my friend.
I love the passion. Now, let me also make it clear here, because as I said, I believe in facts, and facts have a basis. Now, you don't use social facts to protect economic issues. You use it to protect social facts if there's social. If they're economic facts, they go to the economic sector of life. If they're academic facts, they go to academic sector of life. Sometimes they don't agree. Now, the first fact is the issue of gender and sex. When you attach a role to sex, it becomes gender. So sex plus a role, you get gender. I'm trying to be as simplistic as I can. I've taken this. I had to leave. I also worked in banking. My brother Mumia, I left the bank to go to South Africa so that I don't study in Kenya, so that I get a different system. And I specifically studied to become an activist. So as I speak, I went to a department of sociology specifically for that. And part of what we had to undergo and learn and understand, and we did collaboration in a few other countries across all the continents, was to understand this so that we don't just wake up and say we are Kenyans. If this concept of globalization is working, is it working for us? So gender is when you attach a role to the sex. Now, the issues you talked about, and Francis, I think from the way he has talked, he has alluded to the fact that he's a medic. I don't know him, but that's what I've picked from what he has said. And therefore, being a medic, he might know this better. There is something called endocrine system in the body, the hormone system. Now, male and female have the same hormones, but in different quantities at different stages of life or at different points in life. So if the dominant hormones happen to be the male controlling hormone, or the one that brings out the male character, so even if you are a female, you will behave like a male.
Yes.
However, that is what you call hormonal imbalance, and it is a condition that needs to be addressed medically. So when you get somebody who is having a medical condition, you don't now make it a right that condition cannot be addressed from a medical perspective if you are to remain rational. So if you find the question that you asked, why should somebody be bothered when a man marries another man, and yes, nobody was bothered when they were marrying a female if they were males? It is because it is unnatural. Now that your focus is on natural issues, this is not it is not natural. I am not quoting the Bible, and I also gave you my basics. And unless you really insist, it is unnatural. And therefore, whenever it happens, there is more underlying factors that need to be addressed if it can be brought back to natural. Now, the issue of gayism, gay rights, and gays, I think we must appreciate the fact that, one, the constitution as it is today appreciates gay rights. Fact. It does not just recognize a gay. So the question is gayism the same as the gay? The truth is that these are two different people. If you are a gay, you are still a human being. And therefore, you are entitled to all reasonable human rights that applies to you. Just like if you're a madman or a thief, we should not shoot a thief because we caught them stealing from a human rights perspective. But again, we must condone the theft, or we must treat the mental challenge that a person we consider a mad person has, if it's a medical issue that has arisen to what people call madness. Now, globalization has made us feel like we have something they call free market. Now, this is a concept that was raised somewhere in 1953 after the Second World War, and we had some establishments. And this concept of globalization also wanted us to be one market, not one source of the idea, but one market. That's why today you cannot begin to produce nuclear weapons here or energy on your own because of globalization. But those who control nuclear weapons want to tell you that them having it, the world becomes secure, and the US, for example, but North Korea having it, the world becomes insecure. They will want to tell you, for you to take your produce to the US market using AGOA, you must have AGOA agreement to get there. You must meet the conditions. But them bringing their things in Kenya, no condition is required. Don't give any condition. The same with if you are to take the same produce that only Africans have a better challenge, or third world can have a better situation or a better advantage to produce the raw materials from the farms and sell them. That's what they have, or minerals. Now, globalization has created imbalance. So whatever you are calling progressive society, and I want to use America as an example, when they allowed abortion, for example, to be a human right issue, it didn't take 5 years for them to start importing labor because they had a shortage of labor continuously to date. And that's how they introduced the green card program. So it is not at all any progress. If it was a progress, they would have allowed Mugabe to run the country without imposing sanctions, because Mugabe was not killing anybody at that point. It only took 2 years for Mugabe to be the best president, to become bad president, because he disagreed with their things and wanted the freedom. So the control of the Western cultures, whether using religion, language, politics, science, because even the science you are quoting is Western. I carried some books, by the way, I carried some books, and I could not go with those books past the airport because those books are considered not useful in this country, and if you use them, you are actually to be sought after. I remember coming back with books 29.4 kgs. Some of those books did not come into the country. Why? Because they're not considered books I should read. Why? Because there's somebody in control. So what are we saying? The last thing you mentioned there is the issue of Ezekiel Mutua. Ezekiel Mutua is a holder of a constitutional office with a mandate. So the question is he stepping out of his mandate? The answer is no. So if we don't want that office, instead of attacking the person who is doing his job well, we abolish that office and their processes. But the fact that we focus on him, we lose the focus. And that's where the focus is, that when you focus on Christians, for example, or even Hindus or Muslims, we lose the focus. The question that is against or for atheists to explain is the issue of divinity, the issue of supernaturality, the issue of spirituality. Now, that is only coming out in pockets of bitterness against, specifically and more often, against Christianity.
Okay.
And to me, that is where the challenge is. Now, what should be my thought? I would want to know whether in my presentation in this session so far, I haven't had anybody misquoting or quoting or going against something I've said as irrational or an non-scientific fact. I've spent enough time over 16 years to also do some reading, as basic as they may be. And I've come to a conclusion that you don't make something bad by being bitter against it. Christianity has been fought. It didn't start in this season. It didn't start in the last 100 years, but again, it has grown. So what we should be focusing on is what are we dealing with in Christianity that we have not cracked? Because whether you're a professor or never gone to school, we have found people being Christians. Thank you.
Okay, I will come to you, Ekesa, but let Harrison respond. And also, why is it that it's a problem for atheists to try to expand?
Yeah, you said that. Thank you. You've said that you've not said anything irrational. Let me tell you something that you've said that is very irrational. You say that science is not Western. I don't know whether you've said something like that. Science is Western. Sorry, you said science is Western. You said that even science is Western. That is what I quoted you as saying, and that is just ignorant, because what science is a way, a method. It is a method. Even you yourself, as an African, you can sit down and investigate a subject or a topic or a phenomenon, come up with a thesis. That is why when you do your master's, you're taught how to write a thesis. And in that thesis, you're taught how to collect evidence or to collect data. That data is supposed to be interpreted by you. And once you arrive at an interpretation, you draw a conclusion that based on the study of the following number of people and their responses, the conclusion is that we are formulating this kind of theory. The relationship between these two things is like this. That is what science is. Science is not a Western phenomenon. It is not a Western idea. It is only that a lot of science, because of the research, the funding, you see, the Western countries, the Western world invests a lot in research. In Kenya and in Africa, unfortunately, we do not invest a lot in research. If you just Google and look at the number of journals that have been produced by the Western world, the Western world has produced way more journals, way more scientific journals, way more research papers than our dons, our professors in Africa. And this has purely to do with the funding. Our universities are not well funded. Science is a method of arriving at conclusions. Everybody who has done a master's knows that. And so it is not a Western phenomenon. I think on that one, you've made that was a very shallow statement. Let me talk about Mugabe. You know what Mugabe did, and Mugabe in relation to globalization. You see, we are in an interconnected world. In Kenya, we do export flowers. The money that comes from flowers, the money that we get, it is put into our economy, and the government benefits, and that's how we get our services. In Kenya, we are what we call an import economy. We do not export as much as we import. China is actually one of our key importers. We import a lot from China. We import partly like vehicles. We don't manufacture vehicles. Now, when you live in a country where you rely a lot on importation, most of your products are imported. You cannot fight with the countries that are manufacturing. And then you say that I want to be independent. We are interconnected even economically. If we break away from, for example, from China, we are importing everything from China. We are not manufacturing even a toothpick. And then we are saying that now to make tumekasirika na China, so China, can you break away from Kenya? Our economy is going to go down. If we say that we are now not manufacturing vehicles, then we say now we want to be independent. And we don't, we break ties with, let's say, Europe or Japan. We are not going to manufacture our own vehicles. So our economy is going to go down. So what I'm trying to say here is, what Mugabe did, Mugabe ignored the global dynamics of the economics, and it really messed up. It messed up the economy of Zimbabwe, and it was simply because we live in especially African countries, and that's why I am for the idea that we should move away from being over-reliant on what we are importing. We need to start manufacturing our own products. And this COVID-19, I hope, is going to teach people a lesson. Look at what has happened right now. Sweden, they are going on with their business. There's no lockdown in Sweden. In most African nations, many people have lost jobs. The countries that are able to provide for their people are the countries that manage their economy, and they had some buffer money that they could give to their populations. In Africa, we are not seeing that happening because with borrow loans, we have a lot of loans to repay. We are not investing for this kind of periods. When they come, we are in a mess, like the way Kenya is in a mess right now. There is no cushion. We don't have a cushion for those who have lost jobs. I think the issue of Zimbabwe does not help you. The Zimbabwe situation does not help your case, Alphonse. And it actually buttresses my points. It makes my point stronger that we are in a global economy, not just in terms of human rights, not just in terms, even economically, even in terms of knowledge and the flow of information. It is a global system. And the sooner we appreciate that, the better. Now, there is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Just to give you an example on the human rights issue. This declaration was made in 1948. Do you know that the 2010 Constitution borrowed from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, especially if you look at the Bill of Rights? We did not write the people who wrote the Constitution did not come up with their own Bill of Rights. The fundamental freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of belief, freedom to fair administration of justice. Those are fundamental freedoms, my friend, that are actually recognized globally. And that is why when we wrote our Constitution, we had to do the Bill of Rights. That was a very important document because that is a globally accepted Bill of Rights. We didn't write our own. And so to just push aside the whole issue of globalization the way you are, you're saying that we need to be alone, quoting Mugabe and how he messed up. He did not recognize the importance of the British who were giving him funds. When the funds went down, what did you expect the Zimbabwean people to do? The economy went down. That is how it happens even today. That is why Africans need to change their system and their thinking. We need to invest more in our people, in manufacturing, in being in inventing stuff to be able to sell to the West. That's the only way our economies will grow and can be competitive globally. Ezekiel Mutua has been doing a very lousy job at the Kenya Films and Kenya Films Board, KCFB, and Classification Board. Ezekiel Mutua, if you look at the statements Ezekiel Mutua has been making, mostly he comes off as saying we want to protect the moral values, the moral fabric of Kenya. We want to protect. Whenever he's banning a song like Wamlambez, Wamnyonyeze, when he's banning those songs, he's basically saying, you know what? It is me, Ezekiel Mutua, who knows what is best for the public. Number one, this period of the internet, let me ask you, Alphonse, is it possible to stop people from viewing content? Is it really possible? The only way you can do that is to cut off the internet, because me, I don't even watch TV because I have YouTube in the house. When you go to YouTube, you can watch literally anything, not just in Kenya. You can watch music from the United States where you have all those people dancing. Your children, when they have their phones, they can watch that. So this idea of Ezekiel Mutua purporting to protect Kenyans in the name of this is my morality and this is what I think is right cannot work in the 21st century. Let us begin by accepting that even in terms of the internet has broken the barriers and the boundaries we had in terms of content. The days of KCB being the only TV station, those days are gone. With the internet, your child will watch anything. What you need to do is you need to manage now. We are in the period of managing content, not necessarily stopping people from watching, but managing our families, managing. You can have, for example, some applications that stop you from your child from viewing. So Ezekiel Mutua has done a very bad job. he still comes up with he's still driven by religious morality. He believes, and you've seen him inviting a lot of religious people to his office. I've observed that we have written press statements saying that we are not. If you look, I was in a debate with Ezekiel Mutua on, I think, NTV, and I told Ezekiel Mutua, you are a state officer. This is a secular state. Your work is not to police morality. That is not your work. Your work is to ensure that every citizen in this country is treated with fairness, and the morality should be a negotiated issue. You know me, the problem I have with Ezekiel Mutua is that he has his own idea of what is moral, and he wants to impose his morality on us. He's not in that office as a father figure to tell us what is moral or not. That one we won't accept. And even the president, if he comes and says, Kenyans, this is the morality, we are not in a state religion. Morality will continue being a negotiated and agreed issue as far as Kenyans are diverse. As far as we have atheists, gays, lesbians, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, nobody will become and police morality for us.
Thank you, Harrison. Thank you. There's Daniel.
Kindly, moderator, you are not doing your job.
Sure.
Wait, Daniel.
You're not doing your job.
Wait. Just wait, guys. I want Daniel is banning, so and then I'll come to you, Ekesa.
Yeah, right. But you balance time. Huh?
So I hope you're hearing. Can you hear me?
You know, no, just a minute. It's because Harrison is the one who has the agenda, so he has to explain himself.
Yeah, but he can talk one, then we respond. We are not here just to listen.
He's actually
because he's even going and attacking people who are not here.
No, we said he has the right to mention names. I have, maybe you don't, but you can mention whoever you want. I think that's how human rights work.
I think in all media they restrict. In all media they restrict. In all media, I think in all media you don't just mention people who have no right of response.
No, it's okay. We can bring. I can bring him to respond to maybe. To respond to that.
Anyway, Patrick, I think the issue is that there's some level of unfairness when it comes to time allocation. That's one. Okay. Two, when somebody is responding and takes more time than the things that has been raised, there is unfairness in terms of time balance on the subject matter. I think that's what needs to be clear.
Right, my moment, just a short one.
But we said Harrison is actually the one on defense. Is it?
No, we are not defending. We are sharing ideas here. We are not defending anything.
No problem. So Daniel,
can I say something so that we don't lose track? We don't actually lose track. One thing I want to say: Christian faith is one of the very transformational faith. By the way, Paul talks a lot about the issue of transforming our minds. And as our brother said, Alphonce earlier there, in terms of transformation at the pupa and the lava stage, we don't want to be hanging in one particular stage and hang there with a set of truths that we learn there, even as Christians, by the way. Wekesa is a very good proponent of thinking differently. By the way, there are a lot of things that we challenge the current status in our Christian values. And there are so many ways that we try to think about it being Afrocentric and thinking it from our own way of thinking. But right now, so that we do not, because there are a few things that we will not agree on, because we'll talk about this and that and that. I think what we need to do and what I want to talk about is my value and how my mind keeps changing and how my thinking has been. I like the latter part of this particular discussion. I am a manufacturer, and it annoys me when an African mind cannot change. I'm saying I'm a manufacturer. Okay. And I like the latter part of this particular discussion. And I get annoyed when an African mind does not take time to see what we can do for ourselves. And that is one thing that we need to know, that from a Christian basis, from the learning that I have, and especially from Paul, and there are many arguments that we can bring against it and for or against, it's one of the most transformational faith. It makes you get out with your head first. That's what I want us to talk about. How has how can we be able, what can we talk about the transformational aspects of our faith? Because also atheism, to me, according to them, to the way I see it, is also a faith of a kind.
Okay. Harrison, respond to that.
I mean, on the issue of transformation, it's a whole topic because transformation is so broad. But I don't know. I think you see, atheists in Kenya is a society that has been registered with very specific.
A small question. Do you appreciate there's a transformational aspect of a Christian faith?
I think human beings, irrespective of their beliefs, are making all attempts to transform their lives and also their societies at every level. I don't think it's a Christian, Muslim, atheist thing. Personally, I am in forums where I contribute without talking about atheism, about issues that I think can be transformational for our society. So I think when it comes to what you're talking about transformation, let me also just say that Christianity has actually been a very progressive faith in some areas. If you know the history of this country, I have to appreciate that. If you look at the history of this country, the late Billy Mwana Nzeki, who was actually a Catholic, was one of the agitators of multipartyism and was very critical of the Moi dictatorship. So, and if you go back, you still see that Christianity played a big role in the various transformations we've made on the issue of human rights, on the issue of fundamental freedoms. Various popes have come to criticize the US. The US has waged various wars, including the Vietnam War. Certain popes have come and said, let's not have war in the world, and criticize the US for that. So I am not saying that there is nothing Christianity has done in the history of progressive human values and so on and so forth. What we are talking about here is that we need to have there is a point where religion has actually permeated, from our perspective, all sectors of society, to the point where we seem to be under some sort of religious morality. We seem to be under some religious. It's a toxic religious environment. Now we think that we need to promote secularism, much as, for example, you've seen the church, the Catholic Church, coming and giving giving donations to the COVID-19, those who are in need. We appreciate that, and we are also doing our part on that. But when it comes to some principles, the government, for example, where we are paying taxes, we are saying that we cannot allow the government to be run on the basis of religious values. When it comes to the constitution, we are saying that we need a constitution that is totally secular, that does not promote any one religion over the other. These are the issues. But religion has done a lot of good.
Just a minute. Daniel is burning with a question.
Okay. Yeah. Are there some Christian values that you think that have been applied that are actually making other people, disadvantaging others? Not historical, and some of the things that we believe.
No. I think I don't believe that there's something called Christian values or Muslim values or both values. I think what's happening is religion has hijacked the whole idea of morality. So we have a situation where morality is seen from the perspective of religion. So when you talk about good, it is always assumed that good has to always come from religion. That is not the case. Religion for a long time has hijacked the idea of good and bad. It has defined for us what is good and bad. Now, if you do good as Daniel, I will say you have done good. I will not say the Christian values in you are the ones that made you do good. If I do good, don't tell me the atheism values in me made me do good. No, values are a total different thing from religion. Religion has hijacked morality. This is where the problem. This is the problem we have.
Christian. How do you take that?
Sorry.
Because those particular values that you could praise me of, if they have been inculcated by my Christian belief, And I'm not talking about religion here, because religion and Christian living are two different things. But if that particular value has been inculcated in my life by my belief in my Christian value.
All right, so that's
So if that is the case, let me tell you how to assess values. The best way to assess values is by looking at the outcome of those values. So if you do good, the issue is, are there people whose lives have improved? That is how I look at it. Whether they are Christian values or not, that doesn't matter to me. You know, for me, a value is a value to the extent that it affects somebody positively or negatively. The outcome of your actions are more important to me than where you get your values from. And that is why, for me, a value is a question of, does it improve humanity? That is, for me, how I look at values. Or does it diminish the thriving of human beings? To me, that is a very important distinction. But you see where I'm saying Christianity has hijacked moralities, because you want to suggest that those values have been injected inside you. Are you saying without Christianity you cannot do good?
Okay. Let's now get now, Wekesa, just hold on, Daniel. I'm sorry. Hold on. Wekesa, I want now you to maybe there's a question about blasphemy. When we say there is no God or Jesus, and this is the last part I want us to tackle, and then we'll finish the session. Are atheists maybe performing acts of blasphemy?
From my good book, which my friend knows, although he says, first of all, he said that he was a Christian, so he understands. And part of it, he will have to tell us why he left. And the question is, now that we did not trust him with Christianity, will we trust him with secularity? Because he left. And I'm sure he might continue preaching about secularity. And at some point, when people are still following him, he has left his back to Christianity, or he has crossed to Islam. He's trying. He's maybe on an experimental spree. So I don't treasure so much what he's saying, because he's on an experimental spree. But on issue of blasphemy, okay. My own take will be that the word of God says that fools say in their hearts that there is no God. So it's not an issue that God will punish you when you say he's no God, that there's no God. But when you declare there's no God, you are only telling us that there are aspects of life that you don't know. As much as you may have a major in science, you will realize that life is more than a science. Life is made up of many. It's just like somebody who knows everything about Earth and is telling you about Earth and tells you, forget something, forget there's nothing like Mars. Forget there's nothing like Pluto. Forget there's nothing like stars, because he has never gone to the stars. We are told American flag is on the moon. As Kenyans, the highest flag is maybe on Mount Kenya. So we cannot look at it and say, now, forget about the moon, we have no experience. So in terms of blasphemy, this is the perspective from Jesus himself. He said that he didn't come to condemn the world. So neither am I here to condemn my brother for not understanding spiritual matters. But I'm here to exchange ideas so that convictions of the existence of God may happen. People like Paul were fierce critic of Christianity until he met Jesus himself. And I'm certain one of the things when I do Christian apologetics, when I'm doing apologetics of my faith, I know that faith is self-defensive, that I don't have to struggle with my brother convincing him or trying to buy space or get worried that maybe he will come up with ideas to overturn the world. Because one thing I know, secularism are just ideas in the mind. But deep spirituality converts the heart, converts the mind, converts our life, and transforms destiny. If you look at in his argument, you cannot buy any value that they stand for. You cannot buy any hope they have. They are only resenting against a certain things that are happening in the society, but they are not giving the society hope. They are not giving society direction. They are just, it's like coming in a house and demolishing everything, but then you cannot raise another structure that people can believe, that can live in. So they are similarly destroying all the values that religion has met, but they are not giving us an alternative. In my own take is that they are promoting another religion which accepts everything.
Okay, Harrison, you can respond to that, and then after Harrison's response,
I'll be very quick and say that we do promote a morality that is based on what we call human thriving, and the key word here is human thriving. Anything
Examples of the values.
I mean, for example, now that now that we have COVID-19, the Atheists in Kenya Society, we are doing this next weekend. We have bought some food. We have identified some families that are actually very, very, been very negatively affected by the COVID-19. We will be distributing food to them because we think that suffering of that nature is not right. Human beings deserve basic needs. Food is a basic need. No human should suffer because of lack of food. We do believe that when we do that, we will touch a life, we will transform we will give them a chance to go through this period, and maybe once COVID-19 is done, then they can look for something to do. So as a society, we promote, that's why I'm repeating here and saying, we promote a morality that is based on the thriving of humanity, of human beings. And anything that diminishes the thriving of human beings for us should be rejected. Anything that makes you be susceptible to things that bring suffering to your life, anything that does that, we reject that. And that is why we are going out to help the needy. So we do have values, but our values are not based on religion. They are based on human thriving. This concept is actually called humanism. You can Google it up. Now, on issues of blasphemy, the blasphemy laws were used for a long time to silence critics of religion. And I'm happy that in Kenya we don't have blasphemy laws, because I would be in jail today. And all I'll tell you about blasphemy is that there is no single idea, including atheism, that is immune to criticism. We have to accept that everything should be subject to interrogation, to critical assessment, to criticism. We even criticize our president every day. And that is what it means to live in an open democracy, where ideas that do not make sense. And that is why you'll find that for most atheists, we keep challenging the word, the Bible, and I mean the words, the written word in the Bible. We challenge, number one, does it have any historical basis? Did it ever happen? When you say Jesus walked on water, did it happen? We challenge that. Was there a Garden of Eden? We challenge that. Is there life after death? We challenge these things because today we are in an open society where all ideas must be challenged. I'm appealing, and what we are appealing as atheists in Kenya, we are appealing to Kenyans to rise, to have a sort of enlightenment, an enlightenment of the Africans, so that we get to a point where we now challenge what we were taught. You were taught as a child that God exists. Is that true? Are you challenging it? Are you questioning? You went to school. Are you just going to live with that because your pastor tells you that? Let me go to the issue of Paul to Saul. You're saying Paul met a burning bush and then he became Saul. That will not happen to me. I've gotten to a point where I am very, very firm that there is no persuasive evidence for the existence of God. And that is why we went ahead and registered the Atheists in Kenya Society. Again, let me thank this government, because if it was Moi's government, I'm not sure it would have happened. Let me thank this government and the Constitution 2010 for giving us the freedom now to have a society like us, so that we can have this conversation, so that you start seeing that that opinion that you have is subject to challenge. Yes, you believe in God, you believe in faith, you believe in the Bible, but still those ideas are subject to challenge. You'll see us challenging these ideas on and on until we have a position that makes sense to Kenyans. And this is what we are going to keep doing. Yes, you're saying you cannot condemn me, but I'll tell you, in the history of atheism, religion has been a stumbling block for the growth of those of us who have a dissenting voice with regard to religion.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. I want to take a parting shot and then we'll finish. We'll start with Daniel, and then we go to Alphonse, Orchestra, and then Harrison will finish this session.
Well, it's been a good discussion and mind-opening. And I would encourage us to keep thinking and opening up our minds, but also don't get stuck in one stage of development and move all the way to make the transformation complete. And also, as we kind of commonly agree, is that not all that I know there is to know. There are a lot of things that probably I cannot be able to explain. And I believe, finally, I want to state I believe in God.
Good. Alphonse? Alphonse, can you unmute your mic? Okay.
And I've picked one thing that he should not lose: passion. But I also picked something that he need to work on: knowledge. You see, when I picked randomly a few things, and he mentioned the issue of Mugabe, I knew totally here we can't share the ideas, because we first have to be on a closer bar in the knowledge of that idea. Then when we share it, we don't shout or we don't necessarily argue, but we pick the points, and we don't need to pick them from religious or non-religious members, but we pick them from men and women whom we can authentically, from academic perspective, other systems, say these people have seen this, they have said this, and this is working. Because the point of globalization, I said, it cannot be an imposition and then you say that it is free world. Because you see, when I gave an example of Mugabe was given economic sanctions. Yeah, Libya was given economic sanctions. Iraq was given economic sanctions. We have economic sanctions in North Korea. Now, simply because they have a different view from the West. So if the West feel that they are the most powerful, they should just leave then. If that world that you are getting for exists, they should just leave those who don't want to with them to see how they die without any sanction. Don't tell others not to cooperate with them, so that they choose their partners and their partners choose them. So I think imposing things on others does not make it right and does not make it now free. Having listened to these matters, maybe just a quick one, and don't explain much. Atheists are also in categories. I spend a lot of time with anarchists. Which is your inclination in atheism, Harrison?
I'm not in any category. I know what anarchists are, and anarchists are not atheists. They are anarchists. You know, you can have an anarchist who is even Muslim. You can have an anarchist who is a Buddhist. So anarchism has nothing to do with atheism. Okay. Atheism is actually, the categories of atheists are mainly, we have strong. We normally, I like looking at atheists as strong atheists and weak atheists.
Yeah,
we
so
also have
I just wanted to know, so you have answered that. But I want you to be aware of these statements. Absolute freedom destroys freedom absolutely. Absolute freedom destroys freedom absolutely. And therefore, any freedom must have confinements, beyond which it will have infringements, and it becomes dangerous. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that parting shot. I think we'll get to Harrison to finish. Okay, Wekesa, your parting shot.
Yes, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him, it doesn't matter the background, shall have life and eternal life. I'm not sure whether atheism believes in eternal life, and if atheism doesn't give me a hope of eternal life, I would rather be lied that there is eternal life and rather find out that there is no eternal life. I would rather be lied that there is God and later find out that there is no God than remain there and say there is no God and later I find out that there is God. There's something that I have picked from Harrison. He's so majoring in Christianity, and I think because that was his background, he need to do an introspection. Sometimes it's good to reconcile with your past. You may look like you have a cause, but within yourself there are gaps that you are trying to fill in with something else. So they normally say sometimes when you see somebody wearing a very screaming cloth, and then he's trying to fill in the gaps in his life. And so I find where he began, he lost track, and it's not late. He can still retrace back the route to where he began. Otherwise, Jesus is real. And in us Christianity, we don't talk about we don't just talk about Jesus we read about. We talk about experience, that our life, I have been in Christianity for 27 years, and I can tell you for free that it's not what I hear, it is what I have experienced that convinces me. Just to use one story in the Bible, there was a guy who was healed, and then he went back home shouting that come and see the person who has healed me, and they told him that is blasphemy, such a thing cannot happen. And then they even tried to tell him maybe he's a demon, but he told them whether he's a demon, whether he is Beelzebub, I don't want to know. One thing I want to tell you, that I was blind, but now I see. Right now, you can come up with your own rational methods and ways of explaining. But for Alphonse, he will not understand. He has said he was once an epileptic person, but he was healed. Whether you will tell him a lot of science, okay, it doesn't convince. It is in Christianity, we talk about experience. If you have had an experience with something, nothing can take you out of that. I'm finishing with this one of the friends in America was called Daniel like my brother, and he was an atheist. So he was asked, Daniel, do you believe there is God? He said, no. Are you Daniel? He said, yes. Daniel, do you believe there is God? He said, no. Are you Daniel? Yes. So what does Daniel mean? Daniel means God is my judge. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you for that parting shot. Harrison?
I just want to say one thing.
Maybe. Sorry.
I want to...
Okay.
Sorry, Harrison. Sorry for interjection. Maybe as you give us your parting shot, I just thought maybe you can also just help us briefly. Jesus Christ is the founder of Christianity. Muhammad is the founder of Islam, and we can go and go. who is the author, the founder, the anchor of atheism, as part of your parting shots and as you'll be finishing?
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll start by thanking Patrick, who organized this forum and looked for me and told me we need to have this conversation. So my thanks goes to Patrick.
Thank you.
I have been an atheist for more than 10 years now. And I have found that I'm able to live a much, much better life. When I was a Christian, I used to believe in things that I look back at, I think they were totally ridiculous. I used to believe that there is a God, that he has a son, and I need to worship him, I need to read the Bible. I used to believe that we were created. I also used to have a lot of faith. I used to have faith. I used to live by faith. You know, you live by faith. You believe that God is going to work things for you. But I came to realize that that you can actually structure your life, that you can find ways of improving your own life. You can find ways of making life better. You can improve relationships with people. You can improve how you live. You can go to school and study. You can exercise. You know, life for me became reality. It became something that I live, not something that I believe. It became something that I appreciate, that my actions are going to have repercussions. If I go out there and steal, I'm going to be arrested. I became aware of things even like mental illness. I am a person who likes working hard. I like learning new things, not just for purposes of getting a job, for example, education, but for my own understanding. And it's so fascinating that after I stopped being a Christian, I have learned a lot more and interacted with very many atheists from across the world, people who are very, very moral, people who do good, much more for the society than even some of my Christian friends. And so I have come to appreciate the world as a natural world. I've come to appreciate that morality has nothing to do with God. I've come to appreciate that there's nothing like life after death. I've appreciated that we were not created by God. And I'm very comfortable that there's nobody to scare me that if you don't do this, you'll burn in hell forever. In terms of atheism, you have asked me a question, Alphonse. You have asked that Christianity came from here, Muslim, Islam came from here. Atheism has no founder. You know, we have had atheists as long as religion has existed. We have had atheists at every point of it. If you actually read the Bible, there are people who were atheists. If you look at the Old Testament, there were people who did not believe in Jehovah, and Jehovah used to be very annoyed with these people, and he used to punish them every time they don't believe in him. He brings calamities. So atheism is basically the rejection of the idea that there is a God. And throughout the history of humanity, we have had atheists, including the time of Aristotle, come to the time of St. Thomas Aquinas, come to the time of Copernicus, come to the time now in this century of Albert Einstein, of now Richard Dawkins. We've had atheists throughout history, because what atheism is the rejection. Like me, I don't just reject the Christian God. I reject the Muslim God as well. I reject the God of my Luya people. I reject the God of the Kambas and the God of the Nigerians. I reject the God of the South Africans. I do reject all gods because there's no evidence for the existence of a God. So you have to understand atheism from that perspective. So I'll finish by quoting an atheist who was called Clarence Darrow. And this is what he said: "The fear of God is not the beginning of wisdom. The fear of God is the death of wisdom. Skepticism and doubts lead to study and investigation. And investigation is the beginning of wisdom." Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good way to end our long session tonight. I think it was really insightful discussion. Harrison, I will want maybe I will look for you next time to bring you for having this conversation again. If you agree.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, really, thank you and your VP for this discussion and everyone who joined, maybe who viewed this content. We really appreciate you guys. See you next time. Good night, everyone.
Okay,
Good night.
Good night. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Open what I wanna sing, and say the count for sing, yeah. Mana, Mungu nakutuza, mama, nashukuru umekuza, inshallah, mapete nakutunza, mananga, moja wote nakuza, inaonyesha hizi mali, yo, love, Machani ya mdogo, nje ya sayari kipita kimondo.